All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Journey of the Soul, a fresh look at life, death, and the rest in peace. Lesson number 4. So, for 9 years, my wife and I were the Chabad representatives in Olympia, Washington, and we spent a lot of time at Evergreen State College. So, every week on Wednesday, I would go into the main square with my Stump the Rabbi sign. Now, I have to tell you that I really changed the sign from Stump the Rabbi to Ask the Rabbi pretty quick. Because when you go in the middle of a college campus with a Stump the Rabbi sign, people start asking you like physics questions and, and calculus questions, and it didn't really go so well for me. So we switched the sign to Ask the Rabbi. The most popular question that I was asked, right, probably hundreds of times in the 9 years that I was there every single week, was what is the Jewish approach to heaven and hell? It was again and again and again, week after week after week. Why were people asking me this question? Because the issue of heaven and hell plays a major role in other religions. So naturally, when people find out that there's a rabbi and you can ask the rabbi any question, so people are curious, what does Judaism have to say about heaven and hell? And if you're familiar with Judaism a little bit, you probably noticed that Judaism actually doesn't talk a lot about heaven and hell. Heaven and hell doesn't really play a major role in Judaism, so it's a great opportunity for us to talk about it. Question number 1, is there a heaven and hell? Question number 2, what are they like? And question number 3, where will I end up? So some great questions to talk about tonight. And we're going to begin with a video, which is going to be overhearing the conversation of some twins while they're still in the womb.
Birth and death are as contradictory as night and light. But they are strangely associated with an identical Hebrew word, kever. Kever means a tomb where a body is buried. But kever also means a womb where life is formed. A womb is a gateway to life, while a tomb is a gateway to afterlife. But is there an afterlife? Or does laying a body to rest in a grave mark the absolute end? If it were within our power to interview a soul, we would undoubtedly glean insight into afterlife. Instead, we have chosen to eavesdrop on a set of twins in their mother's womb to shed some light on the before life.
Hey, twin, I'm scared of birth.
Why?
It's the end of existence. We get ejected. We're finished.
I'm also anxious, twin, but I'm not scared. Birth is supposed to be a transition to the real life.
Huh. Don't give me the hiccups with your after-birth, real-life fantasies. How can life be supported without an umbilical cord and amniotic fluid?
Well, maybe it's a radically different form of life. Maybe we won't need the cord.
I wish you were right. I keep kicking that thing away from my neck.
Stop spinning for a minute and imagine, twin. After birth, we will enter a ginormous universe filled with light and with air that we will breathe through our mouths.
Come on, grow some brain cells, will you? Mouths are not for breathing. Besides, if your postnatal paradise existed, why has no one ever returned from that realm? Forget it. Once we leave here, we collapse into cold, dry nothingness and wither into eternal gloom.
I don't think Mother would allow that to happen. She nurtures us in this cozy womb. She sends us nutrients for months on end. For what purpose? Just to end it all with birth? No. Mother has greater plans for us than that.
Now you're beginning to sound infantile. Do you see a mother lurking in some corner of the womb? Not a trace. Show me a mother. And as for your nutrients, can't you feel that annoying cord? Don't exchange empirical for fantastical.
Thankfully, these two delightful infants made it safely to the other side. They grew up in the universe that one had described and the other had denied. And until today, they continue their clamorous debate. It is only that the topic of contention has slightly shifted from, is there life after the womb, to, is there life after the tomb?
So this video made two really good points. So point number one is that it's really easy to be skeptical about any afterlife experience because nobody's been there. It's pretty, and has come back to tell us about it. And it's very difficult for us to relate to something that's totally out of our world. Just like the baby in the womb has an ability to imagine that there can actually be life, trees, animals, a sky, an ocean outside of the womb. But the more important point is this phenomenal terminology that this video has shown us. How should we look at the afterlife? Just like that baby in the womb who was quite skeptical about being born the first time, we have to look at the experience of death like being born twice. Once from the womb and once from the tomb. It's easy to say this. It's even easier to create a rhyme. It's a little harder to actually answer the questions, which is, what exactly does this look like? What does it feel like? What is heaven about? What's hell about? What takes place with the soul after it leaves the body? Before we continue, I just want to remind everyone to please put yourself on mute. That way it'll eliminate any background noises, but feel free at any moment in time to jump in and join the conversation. So I want to start with two questions, and we can answer them one at a time. Question number one is, how are heaven and hell typically depicted? The second question is, how is the process of determining who is going to go to heaven and who's going to go to hell depicted? So now, again, you can unmute yourself, jump right in. In your experience, how is heaven and hell typically depicted? If you have a thought.
If I'm being glib, which you probably aren't looking for.
No, I want glib. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, glib. Okay, Dante's Inferno would be the encapsulation of hell.
Okay. What about heaven?
Angels and clouds and the
Right.
pearly gates.
So would you agree that the general depiction of heaven is like music, and it's light and bright, and there's angels, and the weather's great, and you got all that kind of stuff? Yeah. The typical depiction of hell, it's dark, it's gloomy, there's fires burning, right? You got a devil, there's a pitchfork, right? That's, the depiction. And you can get really creative. There's an artist, Hieronymus Bosch or something like that is his name. I only know that name from the Harry Bosch novels, but that's another story. But he has quite interesting pictures and large paintings that can describe hell.
Aren't these all Christian concepts? I mean, aren't they ab initio alien to us?
Well, yes. However, the problem is that for most people, those are the only concepts that we know about. Yeah, most people didn't really grow up with a clear understanding of the Jewish approach to heaven and hell, so we're often left with the non-Jewish approach,
which I've personally I dismiss. I mean, I don't. It's just of no effect for me.
Well, I'm very happy that that is your approach, and we're going to hopefully we're going to fill in some of the gaps in the knowledge tonight. Now, what about the process for determining who goes to heaven and who goes to hell? What is that system going to look like? Yeah, Avi, you have any thought? What does that process look like?
Well, as Judaism says, if you're good, you go up. If you're bad, you go down. It's about as simple as it can get.
That's
and
good means, yeah.
Good means mitzvahs, charity, study, It's too simple. Too simple.
All right, fabulous, Avi. So we have come to the conclusion at this point in time that heaven and hell are two distinct places. One can be quite pleasant and quite nice. The other one is quite unpleasant, not really nice. You probably don't want to go there. And how do it determine which place you go? If you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. Or what is the Jewish perspective? We begin with text number 1a, which this is taken from the 13 principles of Jewish faith as organized by the Rambam. Principle number 11, text number 1a, page 132. Eileen, would you like to start us off, please? You?
Sure. The 11th of the 13th principle, or the 13 principles of Jewish faith, is that God, blessed be he, rewards those who observe the commandments of the Torah and punishes those who transgress its prohibitions.
So this is, it's quite clear why this is one of the 13 principles of Jewish faith, that if you don't believe in this idea, you're missing something very fundamental from what Judaism is all about. Good deeds are rewarded, right? Negative behavior is going to be punished. There is a system of justice that exists within Judaism. Now, the question then is, this system of reward and punishment, where is the primary location of this system? Is it in this world, souls in bodies, or do we experience the primary reward and punishment in the afterlife when the souls are disconnected from bodies? Eileen, if you could read the second part, text 1b as well.
Sure. The greatest reward is the pleasures of the world to come. The strongest punishment is to be cut off from the world to come.
So we see in this text from the Rambam that where is the primary location and destination of the reward and the punishment? It is in the afterlife experience. So let's briefly summarize reward and punishment from the Jewish perspective. Of course, there's a lot more to say. Judaism certainly teaches that reward and punishment comes in both physical and spiritual forms. Number two, spiritual reward and or punishment is primary, right? That's really the main event. That's where it's at. And finally, number three, the spiritual reward is infinitely more enjoyable. Right? As frustrated as we might be that we wish we could experience some of the reward in the physical sense, but we should know and realize and appreciate that the spiritual world is infinitely more enjoyable. Now, the next question, I want you to put yourself into Hebrew school. Imagine you're a child and you are being taught the fundamental principles of Judaism. Now, maybe you're a kid, maybe you're Hebrew school, you're bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah age, maybe you're even a teen. But imagine you're forming your perceptions of what Judaism is all about. And you're taught the system of reward and punishment. That if you behave and you follow all the rules, you will be rewarded and you will go to heaven. If you do not follow the rules, you are going to be punished and you are going to go to hell. Is this something which is going to motivate you? Is this something that's going to inspire you? Do you think this is a healthy perspective on why you should or should not observe Judaism? Any thoughts? See, Eileen is shaking her head. I think
generally fear is not a good motivator. It's only a short-term motivator. And so if you are so worried you're going to go to hell, then you act out of fear and you stop doing good things and you rely, and your primary motivation is just not good.
Absolutely, Eileen. I think this is the reason why all of those students and teachers and professors at Evergreen State College were asking me about heaven and hell. Because the concept of heaven and hell, of reward and punishment, was such a huge factor in their religious experiences, it was definitely something which distanced them and drove them away from religious experience, because the threat or the dangling of a carrot simply was not doing it for them. It was not spiritually fulfilling. It wasn't motivating. And in fact, it was actually something that was a turnoff. So one of the reasons why reward and punishment can be a bit of a turnoff is because, generally speaking, the reward has absolutely nothing to do with the action and behavior that you did. And same thing, the punishment has absolutely nothing to do with the behavior that you did. There's no connection. There's a randomness that can be frustrating. What do I mean by that? What is a reward that has no connection with the action? Right? When it comes to a great example of working, a person goes to work. You do some type of job, you perform some type of act, and the result of that act is money. Did you make money? Did you create the money? No. What you did was something that was completely different and separate from the money which you got paid. Then you take that money, and what do you do with that money? You buy food. The actions and the activities that you did are not related and not connected to each other. So therefore, you don't feel a connection between any of these items. A much healthier way and a better way of looking at what's essentially the same idea, which is reward and punishment, but using a much healthier terminology, is consequences. And not just consequences, but there are certain things that when you do them, there is a natural consequence that follows. Here's a great example. If a person plants seeds in the ground, what's going to happen? They're going to reap the rewards of the growth, and they're going to result in having that very same bread. Which of the two people is more satisfied and feels a sense of accomplishment more? The person who went to work, got a paycheck, and bought the bread, or the person who plowed his field, reaped the harvest, and grew the bread? I would certainly argue that it's the second person. Because when you feel that the actions that you're doing are directly contributing to and are creating and naturally flow from the previous action, there's a satisfaction that you have. There's a deep connection that you have, because you understand that it's what you are doing that is literally causing and creating the results. With the system of reward and punishment, the reward is different and distinct and not connected to the action. The punishment is not connected to the action. There's just a feeling of disconnection. It's like an external system that's imposed on you. It's forced upon you. You don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. And it's not that appealing. However, when it's a natural consequence, the connection is there. It's obvious. It feels good. It feels right. And you could plug yourself in and feel completely connected to it. Let's go to text number 2.
Can I ask you a question, Rabbi?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't want to be a negative, but I have some difficulty in seeing the comparisons that you're making. I don't see the connection. The character of behavior in both instances is so different, and they're both subject to so many different influences that I don't think that's a valid comparison. You can sow, and you can do a wonderful job of doing that, but something can intervene, and everything that you've done is for naught. So you won't reap, and you won't have food unless you supplement it in some other way. In the example of doing work in exchange for money, you don't have that negativism, but you can have just as much satisfaction from doing what you do that you're paid for as you do from sowing seeds. And I don't see this valid as a comparison. I'm sorry, that's just how I feel about it.
I appreciate the comment, and please feel free to challenge me at every step of the way, right? Do not shy away, as hopefully your question will force some greater clarity on the issue. So the point that I'm trying to make, whether the specifics of the example are appeal to you or not, is that when a person can see the natural result of what they're doing, it's easier for a person to relate and to connect to it. If you're doing something that intrinsically doesn't have any meaning or value and are just getting a reward for it, you don't have the same sense of satisfaction as when you can directly see the benefit of what you're doing. So a person can be doing a job that is like, I'll give you an example that's found in the Hasidic philosophy. So the king is traveling the countryside, and he sees a person working in the field, and the person is cutting down sheaves of wheat, and the person has a graceful, majestic motion back and forth. As the blade goes up, the blade comes down and slices the wheat. The king says, "This is so beautiful, I could watch this all day." And in fact, that's what he does. He hires the farmer and he says, "Come to the palace, I'm going to put you in a room, and all day you're just going to swing that, I guess the side, you're going to swing it back and forth. I love that motion. Now I'm going to pay you 10 times more than you ever made working in the field." The guy says, "This is the greatest opportunity in my life. Done. I'm hired." He goes to the palace and he's swinging the side back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he starts getting bored, starts getting tired. The king is watching it. The king is delighted. The king is enjoying himself. And after a while, the person quits. And he says, "I'm sorry, the money's good, but I'm not interested anymore." He says, "Why?" "Because I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not doing anything. It's a job, it's work, it's labor. I'm getting paid well, but I don't have that same sense of satisfaction because I don't appreciate the result that I'm getting from it. When I was out there on the farm, yes, it's the same labor, and I'm getting paid a lot more. In the field, I'm getting paid a lot less, but I can see and tangibly appreciate the result of what it is that I'm doing, and therefore I connect with it on a deeper level." So that is what I'm trying to say, is that when it comes to reward and punishment, you're doing various actions and the reward seems to have no connection for it. Do a thing and then you get a reward. It's hard to connect with it. And the same thing with the punishment. But if you could reframe our entire relationship with God in different terms, it's not a reward and a punishment that's not related to the action, what we're doing, but rather the reward and the punishment, the heaven, the hell, is a direct and natural consequence of how we act and how we behave. They're intrinsically, absolutely connected. They're essentially connected to each other. We'll have a whole new appreciation for what it means to be in a relationship with Hashem. So I hope that helped clarify a little bit. And as we go on through the class, hopefully each of the pieces will fall into place. If that was not good enough, please make sure to challenge me again before we conclude the class. Let's go to text number 2. Jim Weimer, please, on page 134. This is a beautiful text from Rabbi Menachem Rekanti, great Jewish philosopher.
"Do not consider the punishments described in the Torah as comparable to penalties a person incurs disobeying the decree of a mortal king. Not at all. Rather, they are completely natural consequences. For one who fails to observe a Torah commandment is denied the good that naturally results from its observance. It is comparable to one who fails to sow his field and therefore cannot reap a harvest, or one who fails to wear clothes and then is cold. It is a natural consequence as the warmth provided by a fire, the wetness of the water, and the satiation of bread in the same way. And in the nature of each mitzvah to provide the positive consequences, they are promised for its observance, or the negative consequences that are stated regarding its transgression.
So this is a much deeper, much more beautiful way of looking at our relationship with God and Torah and mitzvahs. So now let's apply this idea to the concept of heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are not so much rewards and punishments, rather they are the direct and natural consequences of our actions. So let's give an example of what that means. Imagine a person plans a beautiful romantic vacation. Tropical island, right? Crystal clear water, beautiful beaches. You cannot imagine a more perfect setting. Now, if you are going on this romantic vacation with your spouse and you're getting along fabulously, you're getting along wonderfully, this romantic vacation can be absolutely heaven right here on earth. But what if you plan this beautiful romantic vacation to go with your spouse, but you're not getting along? You're fighting like cats and dogs. The relationship is a disaster. You're horrible to each other, bitter to each other. The exact same romantic vacation could be very much a living hell. You're going to exactly the same place. The location is the same. It is a romantic vacation destination, the same gorgeous beach, the same palm trees, the same crystal clear water, the beautiful reef, and the fish swimming. However, the experience that you have there is entirely up to you because you create the experience. It is a natural consequence of your behavior, your actions, your relationship, whether you're in heaven or whether you're in hell. This means that from the Jewish perspective, there is no such place that's called heaven. There's no such location, there's no such destination that's called hell. That doesn't exist. Rather, what are we saying? Heaven and hell are a state of being. It's a way of living, it's a way of experiencing what we create through our actions. The afterlife experience that we have, it's not a destination, it's not a place where you go. Rather, it is a world we create with our actions. It's the same place. It's the same experience. Just as I talked about that romantic vacation destination, for one couple, it's heaven, and for another couple, it's hell. It's up to us. We create it. Let's go to text number 3. Avi, would you like to read text number 3?
Yes, sir. Just a moment. Oh, short one. Okay. The reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. The retribution for a sin is a sin.
So this is a pretty well-known Mishnah that we have in Pirkei Avos, but it says something a little bit strange. The reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. The retribution for a sin is a sin. Didn't we, at the beginning of the class, quote the Rambam where he discusses the 13 principles of faith, where he seems to imply that there is some actual reward for the mitzvahs that we do, and there's some type of punishment for the sins that we do. Yet this Mishnah says something very different. It says the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. What does that mean? You get like another mitzvah? It's like a frequent flyer program where you fly a mile, they give you a mile? Like, what exactly does it mean that the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah? Avi, if you put on tefillin tomorrow morning, will the next day there'll be a second pair of tefillin in your tefillin bag?
A mitzvah is its own reward.
It's not just that the mitzvahs are their own reward. The word mitzvah comes from the word savsa, which means connection. The natural consequence of a mitzvah is to be connected to and plugged into God himself, to the very reality and purpose and meaning of all of existence. The natural consequence of the mitzvah is that we are plugged into truth, we're plugged into godliness, we're plugged into the essence of all reality. What is the natural consequence of a sin? It's a sin. What does the word avera mean? In this context, it means you're disconnected from the source of life. You're disconnected from God. You're disconnected from purpose. You're disconnected from meaning. Right? The natural consequence of the mitzvah is the connection that we have with God and with truth and reality. The natural consequence of a sin that we do is we are disconnected from God and from the truth and reality. What does this mean? It means that God is not punishing us with hell. He's not rewarding us with heaven. The way that we live our lives, the natural consequence is going to determine the nature of that afterlife experience, whether it's going to be something that we could call comfortable or whether it's going to be something that is uncomfortable. Another example, which is one that the Rikanti used, imagine you are going to Canada to go skiing. You're going to go on a fabulous, wonderful ski trip to Canada. If you have gloves and a hat and a scarf and a coat, it can be a most pleasant and wonderful, beautiful trip. But if all you pack is shorts and a t-shirt, right, you are going to freeze your tachas off, right? And it's not going to be a very pleasant experience. So our behavior, right, the natural consequence is going to determine the afterlife experience. So now that I've said this a few times in a few different ways, what does my afterlife experience look like? Right? What does it look like based on my actions? So we are going to start in the first, perhaps, destination, which is hell. Let's talk about hell a little bit. So number one, from the Jewish perspective, hell is not a place of fire, brimstones. It's not a place of pitchforks and devils. Hell is not about punishment and torture. So what is it? And what's the purpose of it? So hell is a place that a person arrives when we fall short of our potential and the expectations that there were for us. What do we feel in hell? What do we experience in hell? Hell is a place where we become fully aware and we truly feel the consequences of our negative behavior and our moments of distraction and disconnection of God. While we were alive, we were not necessarily aware of it. We might not have known about it. We might not have felt bad about it. We don't know the full extent of the pain, the suffering, the damage that we caused. What happens when a person passes away? You are no longer limited to the memory and the perspective that you had when your soul was tied down to the body. When a person passes away, their soul is able to experience and to view and look at their life and every single moment in it and experiencing it with the fullest range of emotions that a person can possibly imagine. I've heard it described like this. It's the you meeting the you that could have been. You fully are going to realize and recognize, right, the mistakes that you made, the potential that you could have had, the opportunities that you lost. Right? It's a very deep thing. That
Rabbi,
yes, Eileen.
If that is the distinction between heaven and hell, our unrealized potential, our unrealized connection, who among us doesn't have that in some way, some shape, or some form, that we haven't achieved all that we could, or that we haven't missed opportunities or something like that? So wouldn't that be that we would, unless we're a tzaddik, wouldn't we all go to hell?
Yeah, so besides for Avi, right, odds are we're probably all going to hell. Now, not for that long, and we'll get to what that means in a minute. But yes, you are 100% right that besides for the typical tzaddik and Avi, most of us probably have made a mistake or two, Most of us probably hurt someone, whether we're conscious of it or not conscious of it. And most of us probably have not maximized our full potential and could have done more. And that is what we will see, feel, and appreciate in the fullest extent in what you would call hell. And yes, that's painful. That is why Judaism uses terminologies that elicit the concept of pain. Now, there is no physical fire in hell. It's not a physical place. So those are totally not the right words. However, from this perspective, it's painful to fully experience all of that negativity that we did in the world to the fullest extent. However, it's not just painful, it is profoundly therapeutic. It's important to note that. It's not just painful, it's profoundly therapeutic. Now, why is that therapeutic? We certainly have a psychologist or two here that is.
Can't we
taking
be
a class.
elevated after we pass? Isn't that one of the distinctions, that after we're gone? Wait, it's frozen.
Sorry,
We're-
Marty, what are you?
It's frozen. Oh. Well, no,
Mark,
I guess
are you
what I'm asking, isn't that why we are able to be elevated? Why in the afterlife or whatever it is?
It is therapeutic, and it does allow us to become elevated. And the reason it allows us to become elevated, and I think that the therapists and the psychologists that are on the class would agree, that it's only when we fully confront our shortcomings, right, and we own them, can we actually be free of them and perhaps grow from the experience. So when the soul is confronted with its own shortcomings, the mistakes that it made, the pain that it caused, and the failure to live up to its potential, it could confront it, it can own it, and then it could let go of its attachment to those mistakes that it made in life. That allows the soul to be cleansed from any damage, from any dirt that it accumulated when it entered this world. Let's go to text number 7. Very powerful text. Debbie, would you like to read text number 7?
Sure. Okay. What a shame.
Let me get to it myself. Gotta flip the pages here.
One
We are
shame.
jumping a little bit out of order. Text number 7, what a shame, please, Debbie.
Then an individual will also see himself in a new light. Even in our mortal physical state, looking at oneself can sometimes be pleasing and at other times very painful. Imagine standing naked before God with your memory wide open, completely transparent, without any jamming mechanism or reducing valve to diminish its force. You will remember everything you did. You will see it in the light of the unshaded spirit, or if you will, in God's own light that shines from one end of creation to the other. Wow. The memory of every good deed and mitzvah will be the sublimest of pleasures, but your memory will also be open to all the things of which you are ashamed. They cannot be rationalized away or dismissed. You will be facing yourself, fully aware of the consequences of all your deeds. We all know the terrible shame and humiliation experienced when one is caught in the act of doing something wrong. Imagine being caught by one's own memory with no place to escape. A number of our great teachers write that the fire of Gehenna is actually the burning shame one experiences because of one's sins. Of course, these concepts, as used by our sages, may also contain deeper mysteries and meanings. But a major ingredient of this fire may be shame. How else could one characterize the agony of unconcealed shame upon a soul? We are taught that the judgment of the wicked lasts 12 months. The pain eventually subsides.
So the pain of what we would call hell is not a pain of fire. It's not the pain of a pitchfork. It's not the pain of some type of forced slave labor. It's the pain of experiencing the shame of knowing the full extent of what we didn't do correctly in the life that we live. And that pain, in fact, is not for the purposes of punishment. It is directly for the purposes of healing. So the Jewish concept, first of all, the term is not hell, right? The term is Gehenna. Gehenna is not eternal damnation. A much more accurate way of describing it is soul rehabilitation, not eternal damnation, not eternal punishment. It's all about soul rehabilitation. Now, Gehenna, the word Gehenna means purgatory. So therefore, Gehenna is the place where the soul is purged and cleansed of all its shortcomings. Let's go to text number 6. Brad or Marilyn, would you like to read text number 6?
Sure. What page?
Page 139, text number 6, purifying fires.
Okay. 139. That's number 6. Okay.
Speak up.
Okay. Let's see, do I start with what's in the parentheses or?
It's page 139, text number 6, the purpose of Gehenna.
Oh, okay, right here.
Yep.
Okay, the purpose of Gehenna is to refine the soul and rid it of any sickness that it contracted. This is similar to the process of smelting silver, wherein the dross and sediment is burned away in a furnace, leaving the silver clean and free of impurities. Similarly, for the soul to be able to experience the light of the supernal pleasures and bask in God's radiance, it must first be refined in the spiritual fire of Gehenna, whereby the negative is purged from the positive.
So this text again emphasizes the idea that the concept of hell or Gehenna in Judaism is not about punishment. It's a spiritual, soulful rehabilitation process, right? With the end goal is for the soul to go to paradise, to go to Gan Eden, to go to heaven. Now, this explains a fabulous Talmudic story, which if you want to read it in the inside, it's text number 5. There was a great Talmudic sage, his name was Elisha ben Avua, one of the greatest teachers of Torah of his time and in his era. But unfortunately, he witnessed a tragic experience, and that experience broke him, and he became an apostate, he became a heretic, and actually caused a lot of problems for the Jewish community, to the extent that his colleagues called him Acher. But Acher means somebody else. He became a totally different person. However, one of his students, his name was Rabbi Meir, still maintained a relationship with him. So the Talmud tells us that when Elisha ben Avua died, when Acher died, the heavenly court was not sure what to do with him. They felt they cannot send him to hell. They can't send him to Gehenna. Why? Because of the good that he did in his life. He was such a tremendous Torah scholar. The amount of Torah that he taught and the good deeds that he did, they can't send a person like this to hell. On the other hand, they can't send him to heaven. They can't send him to Gan Eden, because look at the negativity and the corruption that he caused as a result of his heresy. So what should they do with him? So his student, Rabbi Meir, the Talmud says, he prayed that the heavenly court send his teacher to hell. Why did he want his teacher to go to hell? As the text concludes, better that he indeed be judged, so that he may then enter paradise. The concept of hell, the concept of Gehenna, it's not about punishment. It's about confronting and experiencing the negativity that we caused in the world. Our soul is cleansed and purified, and then can ascend and experience the goodness that the soul caused in the world, which is Gan Eden and the heavenly experience.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
Right, quick question. Where does tshuva come into this?
We are going to get to tshuva in a moment or two.
Okay.
Right? This you can call the process of Gehenna, hell, as a tshuva for the soul. Right? You could definitely call it the tshuva for the soul process. So we have discovered that the name hell is completely, totally inappropriate to be utilized in the Jewish context. Now, we've used the word Gehenna, right? Gehenna is a much more accurate terminology, which means purgatory, because it's really a purging and a cleansing process. However, even the term Gehenna and purgatory does not really roll off the tongue, and it doesn't really capture the true essence of what this experience is all about. What is a more accurate word? Soul catharsis. What does this mean? It's the process of releasing and thereby providing relief from strong or repressed emotions that result in renewal and restoration. So Judaism does not believe in heaven and hell. Judaism believes in heaven and soul catharsis. Soul catharsis is the word. It is the process of releasing and thereby providing relief from strong or repressed emotions that result in renewal and restoration, right? That is the new word, yes?
I have a question.
Yes, Joel.
All right, so evil people like Hitler, you know, like people that, or Stalin, that killed millions of people. I know we're speaking of Jewish people maybe right now, or I don't know if you're also talking about other people of other religions and spiritual beliefs. Do they all go to the same area or same place as we will go? And what about Hitler and all these other hideous people that have murdered and killed people?
So the question number one, or I don't know the order you asked, but the question number one is, does this apply to Jewish people and not Jewish people? The answer is 100% yes, right? Absolutely. There's a concept of hell for Jewish people and heaven for Jewish people and for non-Jewish people. It's all based on the life we lived and the connection that we have with Hashem. So absolutely, when it comes to people who are not Jewish, there's heaven, there's resurrection of the dead, all of that wonderful stuff. Now, when it comes to people like Hitler and Stalin and so on, the Talmud says very clearly there's an exception to every rule. Right? There are certain people who obviously this does not apply to. They do not get to experience a soul catharsis. Their soul does not get to become elevated. It's not a topic that I've studied in great depth as in comparison to what we're going to talk about the people who do deserve to be elevated. But my understanding is that they actually cease to exist. Right? That they do cease to exist and disappear. There is not a concept of eternal damnation in Judaism. You're gone, right? You have forfeited your right to have any type of existence, but it's not an area that I studied extensively, but suffice it to say, there is no heavenly reward for the Hitlers of the world, that's for sure. All right, so we have this new terminology, the soul catharsis. So the soul experiences the negative effects of its actions. The painful process cleanses the soul. The soul is now able to experience paradise. Now, it's important that we point out, it kind of applies a little bit later, but every person who is born did tremendous good in their life. Even a person that you might not hold up as the shining example of what a tzaddik is all about, did good in their life to somebody. Maybe, you know, maybe they weren't the best to their parents, but maybe they were great to their kids. Maybe they weren't great to their kids, but maybe they were a fabulous boss, right? They gave charity. They did something good. So we have to recognize that everything that we do in our life that's connected to the physical and the finite is limited. It doesn't last forever. By definition, anything bad that we do in this world is connected to the body, to selfishness, and to ego, and has an expiration date and cannot be eternal. The soul is cleansed from it. But anything that we did good in this world, that's real, that's true, that's eternal, that lasts forever. So therefore, once the soul goes through the process of the cleansing, what's left is that which is real and true, is eternal and lasts forever. And that's what the person is able to experience in their heavenly reward.
Rabbi, why
Yes.
use the word painful? This is a painful process, cleanses the soul, because the catharsis can be quite good. It can be enlightening. A lot of times we do things that we didn't even realize we did.
So it is a painful process that's very good, right? Sometimes a cathartic experience can be very emotional with a lot of crying, a lot of tears, but you come out of it much stronger than you were before. So similarly, again, you're confronting the damage that you caused. You feel the shame from the actions that you did, but it's confronting because you face it, you deal with it, you process it, and then the soul is able to move on from it.
So
it's
the
cathartic.
the pain versus the traditional or Christian view or whatever of hell and damnation and pitchforks and heat, it's just more feeling the shame and confronting it and being honest and seeing what you did wrong.
100%.
Okay.
That is the pain. So we explained that, again, there's no eternal damnation, right? It is a cleansing process. Probably all souls, most souls will spend some time in this soul catharsis experiment. The result is we're going to end up in heaven. And there is actually a Jewish a text which backs this up, which is from the Mishnah, text number 9. Marshall, why don't you go for it? Text number 9, page 141.
Thank you. Each member of the Jewish people has a portion in the world to come, as it is stated. Your people are all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. They are the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, in which I take pride.
So the Mishnah testifies that at the end of the day, we're all tzaddikim, we're all righteous, right? We're all holy. Did we make mistakes in our life? Surely we did. Are we going to need to spend some time in this soul catharsis experience? Yes, we probably will. But the end destination of everyone is going to be Gan Eden, heaven, the Garden of Eden, the world to come experience. Now, how long does the cleansing process take place? What did we learn in a previous text? The maximum sentence is 12 months. Right? That is absolutely the maximum sentence. There are exceptions to every rule, like I said before, the Stalins, the Hitlers, and so on. But the maximum time that a person is going to experience the soul catharsis is 12 months. This is why when we say Kaddish for someone, even though there's 12 months of mourning, we only say Kaddish for 11 months. Because we don't want to make some type of statement that our relative, that our loved one, right, needs our Kaddish for the full 12 months because they're experiencing the maximum amount of time. So we only say Kaddish for 11 months. Now, what's most important to take out of some of this case is that, yes, the soul catharsis is a tshuva that can cleanse the entirety of our life. The most important thing is to do tshuva now. The more teshuva that you do now, the less soul catharsis you need to experience later, right? We don't have to wait till the afterlife experience. Right now, we could look in the mirror, right? You could confront the decisions that a person makes, make better choices as you go forward, and perhaps the trip is going to be that much shorter and that much more brief. So don't wait until the afterlife experience. You could confront the mistakes now. All right, now the soul is cleansed.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes, Yossi.
I'm missing something. So if you don't do that, if you don't do sincere tshuva right now while you're here, you eventually get cleansed. But how does the soul get cleansed? What has to happen to the soul if it get, after you pass, if you didn't do it here. Does that make,
So the soul fully experiences and becomes fully aware of all of the mistakes and the damage and the pain that they caused and the missed opportunities that they had in life. The reasons why we don't do tshuva in life, because we're not aware of the mistakes that we made. If we're aware of it, we don't feel the pain or the shame or the embarrassment that we caused. We don't feel bad about the lack of potential that we didn't live up to. Usually when a person does feel bad and does feel shame and does feel pain, so that pushes you and motivates you to change, to be a better person. Right? What do you do if you insulted your spouse? You caused them pain. If you realize it and recognize it, you apologize. You say, I'm not going to do that again, and you're going to be a much better spouse. But what if you didn't? You didn't apologize, or you didn't recognize. You weren't aware of the pain that you caused. Your spouse didn't relay it to you, or they did relay it to you, but your apology wasn't exactly the most sincere, and you kind of moved on. So it takes place in the soul catharsis element of life, is you fully experience the wrongs that you did in life. You feel the shame, you feel the pain. The soul confronts it and is able to move on and go past it. Okay. And it's exactly the opposite or the parallel of that, which is the experience of heaven. When
Rabbi.
Yes, Andrew.
So where and when does the idea of reincarnation come in if the soul is cleansed?
The idea of reincarnation comes in lesson number 5 next week, Monday evening at 7:30. Was that a good answer, Andrew? I think also,
it was not, but
so for you, Litvaks only live once, so you don't have anything to worry about. Of course, I'm just kidding.
It's a tease. I understand.
We are going to dedicate a full lesson to the theme of reincarnation, which is going to be the topic of next week's lesson. But before we could get into reincarnation, we have to appreciate what is the experience of heaven. So if hell is when we fully experience the negative that we did in life, so heaven is when we fully experience the good and the positive that we did in life. We said before that the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Doing a mitzvah forges an intimate bond with God. What can be more pleasurable than forming a deep, intimate, close bond and relationship with someone? When a person does a mitzvah, what does that do? It forges a most deep, intimate bond with Hashem. In paradise and heaven, we experience the depth of this relationship. We know here on earth, when we have bonded and connected, whether it's with a parent, whether it's with a spouse, or whether with a child, we know the depth of that love. We can feel the depth of that connection. The emotion is real, palpable, and tangible. However, when we do a mitzvah, when we do a good deed, we don't necessarily know and feel and experience the depth of that connection. However, in the afterlife experience, we feel in the fullest possible measure the reality and the truth of all of that goodness that we did and the bond that it creates with Hashem. So this is what the heavenly experience is about, enjoying the closeness that we have created with God as a result of the good deeds that we've done in our life. It's kind of like that perfect romantic vacation that I discussed before, that you go on like with the actual person that you're close with and that you love. Let's go to text number 11. Nancy or Joel, would you like to read?
Okay, text 11.
Yep.
144. Okay. In the hereafter, there is no eating, drinking, procreation, commerce, jealousy, hatred, or competition. Rather, the righteous sit, their heads adorned with crowns, and they delight in the radiance of the divine presence.
So the heavenly experience is where we're able to delight and to appreciate and value, to bask in the glow and in the glory of our relationship with God. So now, with all of this in mind, let's go back to a question that we asked at the beginning of the class. For so many people, their presentation of heaven and hell is all about reward and punishment. And that leaves a very bad taste in many people's mouths, and it does not motivate them and inspire them to continue in religion. However, based on what we've said thus far in the class, it's not about reward and punishment. Rather, we're living with the reality that we created. It's the natural consequences, which means heaven is the joy of our connection with God, and hell is the pain that we experience as a result of our separation from him. So this is a totally different attitude of how to live life, how to live a religious life. It's not, I better be good or else I'm going to miss the reward and I'm going to experience punishment. It's not about worrying about being out of line. It's about being in a very real and meaningful, concrete relationship with God, and knowing that what we're doing, right, leads to direct relationship and to eternal goodness and kindness. Now, as you're reading some of these texts and hearing some of these ideas, you still might have this question, but Rabbi, what's it like? What's it really like? You talk about experiencing the fullness of it. You talk about experiencing the closeness that we have with God, but what exactly is it like? For this, we have text number 10. Bob or Pam, would you like to read text number 10 on page 143?
Spiritual reward is abstruse and difficult for a mortal intellect to visualize and grasp as long as the intellect remains attached to a corporal body. Just as one who is blind cannot grasp the concept of colors, so the spirit that is engaged with corporality cannot grasp purely spiritual matters.
So the answer to what heaven is really like and what it means to bask in the glory of God and to feel the pleasure and the joy of that, there are no words that can describe it. It's simply not possible. There are no words because we are physical and that experience is spiritual. You cannot explain to a person who was born blind that the reward for your life is going to see the most beautiful colors. They don't know what that means to see, and they don't know what colors mean. It's not possible. So we can't give you words and terms to describe it more than what we've done thus far in the class. However, there is a term that we could somewhat to relate to. It's a term that you've heard time and time again, which is what happens when a person is in heaven, what happens on a person's yard site. In paradise, the soul is in a constant state of progressive elevations. Have you ever heard somebody wish someone that the soul of your dearly departed should experience an ascent? It should rise on high. This is one of the terms that we do use. So what exactly does this mean? What it means is that the soul actually has the ability to grow. The soul has the ability to grow and to deepen its relationship with God and its experience with God. It doesn't remain static. The soul has the ability to grow. The more the soul grows, the more it feels closer to God. The more the soul feels closer to God, the more that the soul actually grows. Similar to a human relationship. The better you are to each other, the deeper the relationship is going to be. The deeper that the relationship is going to be, the better that you are going to be to each other. Now, this is true every day and in general. However, the Torah tells us that once a year, the soul is able to make a huge leap. The soul is able to grow in a tremendous possible way in its relationship with God. When is that? The yahrzeit. On the yahrzeit, the soul experiences a quantum leap in terms of its ability to grow and advance in its afterlife heavenly experience. Now, why is that? The yahrzeit is the anniversary of the day that the person passed away. What happens on the day that the person passed away? The soul became disconnected from the body. The soul was no longer experiencing a very limited and handicapped part of itself. The soul is now feeling and experiencing the fullness of its spiritual capacities, the fullness of its emotions. The soul was unleashed from the confines of the body to experience its fullest and deepest self. The soul has an energy explosion, so to speak, at the moment that it passes away. The soul re-experiences that spiritual energy explosion on the yahrzeit, and the soul is able to ascend on a higher and higher level and to experience an even a greater closeness to Hashem. So the yahrzeit is a very important day for the soul and its ability to advance in this world. But even with the advance that a yahrzeit provides, the growth of the soul is still limited. The reason that it's limited is because it can't do anything new. The afterlife experience of the soul is totally based on the life that it lived when the soul was invested in the body. Once the soul leaves the body, it can't do anything more. Therefore, it can't generate any new connections. It can deepen the ones that it has, but it can't create anything new. It's all about past accomplishments. So the moment a person passes away, their heavenly experience, so to speak, is set. It's determined on how you lived your life. This is where we come in. This is the critical role that we play as mourners or as friends of the person that departed. We can help. How? Why? When we do good deeds, when we do mitzvahs in honor of the person and in memory of the person and to perpetuate the memory of the person, those good deeds and mitzvahs that we do are actually credited, so to speak, to the account of the person who passed away. It's like they're the ones giving the tzedakah. They're the ones studying the Torah. They're the ones who are doing the mitzvahs. And that greatly enhances their relationship with God. So there really is so much that we can do in a real way for the people that we love that we lost. Let's go to text number 12. Gail, would you like to read text number 12? Are you up for it?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Excellent. Text number 12, page 146.
When individuals act righteously and are outstanding in the service of their Creator, they generate tremendous merit for the souls of their parents. This merit is simply by virtue of their parents having served as the instruments of their births. It is the parents who enabled their soul to be born into this world, which in turn enabled the many righteous deeds that they perform. The parents, therefore, have a share in their meritorious acts. However, anyone's charity or prayers on behalf of a departed person are beneficial for the soul of the deceased. It is therefore a Jewish custom to give charity and do other good deeds on behalf of the deceased in order to cause satisfaction to the soul.
So in this text, we learn the incredible value and the incredible help and benefit that we can bring, that we could do, and that we can give to someone who passed away. But it had two categories. There's the children of the deceased, and then there's everyone else. What's the difference between the actions of the children of the deceased and everyone else? When it comes to the progeny, when it comes to the children, any mitzvah that a child does is automatically a credit to their parents. They don't need to have to do the mitzvah with specific intention that it be credited to their parents. A child is a credit to their parents. So therefore, the life that you continue to lead is going to greatly benefit your parents. What about other people? For other people, it requires a specific intention. That means when you do a mitzvah, you do it specifically. I'm doing this mitzvah in memory and to honor the memory of a loved one that passed away. And then that mitzvah is going to be able to be credited to them as well. Now, there are times that are particularly opportune for doing mitzvahs and good deeds in honor and in memory of a person. The first time period would be the first 12 months. The first 12 months is because that is when the soul is most directly connected to this world, as we talked about in a previous class. So during the year of mourning, it is most opportune to do mitzvahs on behalf of that person. Of course, mitzvahs on the yartzites, and then finally in connection to the memorial prayer of Yizkar, which we say 4 times a year, on Yom Kippur, Shmini Atzeres, Pesach, and Shavuos. Now, what are some examples of mitzvahs that we could do on behalf of someone who passed away? So I'm going to show it on the board here, but I'm taking the PowerPoint, but I'm taking it from figure 4.2 in your book. A person is able to donate to tzedakah, especially in the first year of the passing. Donate daily, even if only a small amount. Particularly opportune times to give charity are before praying and before lighting Shabbos candles. You attend Yizkar services and pledge to give tzedakah in memory of the deceased, study Torah, provide financial support to Torah students and scholars or institutions of Torah study and education, sponsor a Torah class, sponsor or donate books on Torah and Jewish practices to a synagogue or library, write or donate a Torah scroll in the deceased's honor. So these are specific mitzvahs that Jewish tradition tells us that are quite valuable and important to be attributed to the one who passed away. In figure 4.3, we have customs for a yartzeit. We light a 24-hour yartzeit candle. We recite the Kaddish during all the day's prayers, if possible, to lead the congregational prayers, to be the chazan. Visit the grave and recite chapters of Psalms. Donate to charity, study Torah, especially Mishnah. The letters of the word Mishnah are the same letters of the word neshama for soul. So studying Mishnah is actually quite important. Receive an aliyah to the Torah on the Shabbos, preceding the yartzeit. Sponsor a Kaddish for your congregation. The blessings recited there serve as a merit for the soul. Convene a gathering of relatives and friends to commemorate the deceased and to discuss and learn from the deceased good deeds. So these are all things that Jewish tradition emphasizes are very valuable to do on the yartzeit of a person, and it has a huge benefit and impacts the soul in a very positive way. One of the most famous benefits that we can do when a person passes away is to recite Kaddish. What exactly is Kaddish? Kaddish is a proclamation of God's greatness and holiness. That is what Kaddish is, and that is text number 13, the text of Kaddish. Andrea, would you like to read text number 13? Are you unable to unmute yourself? Or yeah, go for it. Unmute yourself and read text number 13. All right, is the iPad not cooperating? All right, if it is not cooperating, then Vivian, would you like to read text number 13?
Sure.
Thank you.
Exalted and hallowed be his great name. Congregation says amen. Exalted and hallowed be his great name throughout the world, which he has created according to his will. May he establish his kingship, bring forth his redemption, and hasten the coming of his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days, and in the lifetime of the entire house of Israel, speedily and soon, and say amen. May his great name be blessed forever and to all eternity.
It continues.
Oh, oops. Blessed and praised, glorified, exalted, and extolled, honored, adored, and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he. Beyond all blessings, hymns, praises, and consolations that are uttered in this world, and say, Amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven, and a good life for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen. He who makes peace in his heavens, may he make peace for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen.
So it's quite a beautiful prayer. However, you'll notice that what's missing from the prayer is any words that talk about the departed, that make any reference to the fact that a person has passed away. It very simply is a proclamation of God's greatness and holiness. If that's the case, why is this prayer such an important prayer that we recite on behalf of someone who passed away? Why is it such a big deal? Certainly in the first year that the person passed away and on the yahrzeit. The answer to this is expressed very beautifully by Rabbi Steinsaltz, who passed away this year just a few months ago. Text number 14, Andrew Cohen, please.
Every member of the community of Israel is, in a sense, among those who establish and proclaim God's sovereignty in this world. As the verse states, "You Israel are my witnesses," God declares through Isaiah. Therefore, the absence of any individual creates a void, as it were, in God's sovereignty in the world. In order to fulfill this void, others need to intensify their work and to proclaim on their own behalf, as well as on behalf of the deceased, exalted and hallowed be his great name. With this perspective, we can understand why reciting the Kaddish elevates the soul of the deceased. The aggregate of a person's actions and accomplishments in this world define his or her life. However, the tally of a person's achievements does not necessarily conclude at the moment of death. A complete evaluation of a person's accomplishments must also include all that is accomplished as a result of the person's inspiration and actions. Therefore, when those who remain alive, and especially the person's children and descendants, whose very existence is a credit to their forebears, do good deeds, they contribute to the deceased's balance and accomplishments. For although the deceased is no longer active in this world, his or her actions continue to inspire positive deeds and actions. That is why the recitation of Kaddish elevates the soul, because God is being exalted in this world as a result of and in the name of the deceased.
So Rabbi Steinsaltz quite beautifully explains to us the value and the significance of Kaddish and why its recital actually has the ability to lift the soul. Because God's name is exalted in the name of the deceased. In other words, by saying the Kaddish, we're making a statement that the very purpose of life itself, the reason why our loved one descended into the world in the first place, was to proclaim God's greatness and holiness. It was to make this world a more spiritual place, a more godly place, a more ethical place, and a more moral place. And by us proclaiming the name of God in honor of and in merit of the one who departed, that person who departed is continuing to act in this world in the most vital and important way. So Kaddish is a very powerful testimony to say that the core and the essence of a person's life, which is to advance the purpose of creation, we advance the purpose of creation by making this world a more ethical, just, and godly place. Kaddish is a statement of God's morality, ethics, goodness, and justice. So therefore, we recite Kaddish in memory. The person then remains and continues to be acting in this world. So to wrap this all up, so what did we talk about today? So in a moment, we'll show the key points video, which will summarize all the ideas we talked about of heaven. We talked about a soul catharsis. We talked about natural consequences, the different ways that the soul can ascend and how we can help. But the most important thing, I hope, that we realize today is the answer that I gave to all of those students and the professors at Evergreen State College when they asked me about the Jewish view of heaven and hell. And the answer is that we don't spend a lot of time in Judaism worrying about what's going to happen after we die. Because from the Jewish perspective, heaven and hell is not a reward or a punishment that comes later. It's a natural consequence of our actions, which means it's not later, it's now. Heaven is not later. Hell is not later. Heaven is right now. Well, the most important thing is the way we live and the way we act. We're not worried about heaven and hell, because if we do what we need to do right here and right now, the afterlife experience is going to totally take care of itself. It's going to work out itself on its own, because it's the natural consequence of our own behaviors. If we're living in the way we're meant to, we're living in heaven right now, and it's just going to follow naturally. So my message to them and my message to you was, don't worry so much about the afterlife. Worry much more about this life. And I'll give you an example of what that means. Imagine there's a doctor who cures cancer. Could you imagine the monetary gain that the doctor is going to get from curing cancer? Now, I asked you this question. What is more important? The $1 billion that the doctor is going to get from curing cancer, or the fact that the doctor cured cancer? I think that the answer is the fact that the doctor cured cancer. The fact that that doctor cured cancer is much more meaningful, it's much more important, and it's much more valuable than any reward, so to speak, that you possibly can get for it. And that's the same thing that we're talking about now, right? Living now, living in the moment. So we'll conclude with text number 15. Mitchell or Arlene, if you would like to read text number 15, please.
Primary reward in the hereafter is the soul returning to its source and uniting with God. Certainly, however, it is even greater when the soul connects with God here in this world through the study of Torah and the performance of mitzvot. That is the purpose of creation.
So the purpose of creation is to be divine operatives in this world. Let's make the most of the time that we have here on this earth. Let's do everything that we can today, and don't worry, the afterlife experience will take care of itself.
Lesson 4. Where we go. 1. God's rewards and punishments are natural consequences of our actions. 2. When we do mitzvot, we forge an intimate relationship with God. In the afterlife, our souls experience the effects of our actions, our relationship with God. This is the greatest possible pleasure, and is also known as paradise, Gan Eden. 3. At times, a soul cannot enter paradise immediately, for its inappropriate actions in this world diminished its capacity to experience spiritual pleasures. Gehinnom, a painful yet cleansing process, is temporary. Every soul ultimately reaches paradise. 4. In Gan Eden, the soul constantly ascends to higher levels. Good deeds performed in a person's memory, including the recital of Kaddish, elevate the soul to higher levels that it cannot attain on its own. 5. What we do here and now is more important than the pleasures or pain of the afterlife. Living in order to receive rewards in the next world, or to avoid heavenly punishment, distracts our focus from where it belongs, increasing goodness and godliness in this world.
All right, next week, lesson number 5, where we go again. That is all going to be about reincarnation. I want to remind everyone again that please go to myjli.com/soul, I believe it was. It will be included in the email where you can have further readings and videos to continue the discussion of the class. There's also additional readings at the end of each lesson in the book. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to stop the recording and we can have a little question and answer time.